Rob, just I was wanting to stay with you. Let's just have a look at some of the other results from this weekend. Wales, again, they don't seem to be able to play for 80 minutes. They held New Zealand, were sort of on the cusp of like a record upset there, and then got completely trampled right at the end.
Yeah.
Argentina beating France. Argentina being the bogey side for France once again.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they were good games. I mean, if you look at the Australia Ireland game as well, a fantastic game of rugby. Lots of Irish passion. They look like they might just be dark horses, no more than that, but dark horses come World Cup time. As we were saying before we came on air, of course, it's being played in conditions very similar to what the Irish are used to and enjoy in Dublin. So they don't have to go; they just got to cross the ditch really to go for the World Cup, and they'll take thousands of passionate Irish supporters with them. So they're pretty decent. They'll be very chuffed to have knocked over both the Springboks and the Wallabies during this sort of autumn series, as they call it. The France-Argentina game was quite a niggly affair, as you might expect. There's some pretty fierce rivalry between them, a little bit of a history, and there were a few little incidents during the game. But Argentina deserved to knock over France, and it was a bit of a correction again for France. Everyone was talking them up a little bit, from a week earlier. But I'm afraid they got a little bit of a correction again. I still think France are a long way off the pace, and perhaps not really top-tier World Cup challengers for next year.
Okay. And Gareth, the Wales New Zealand game.
Yeah, look, I mean, New Zealand once again proved they're probably the fittest team in world rugby. They played for a full 80 minutes. As you said, Wales were fantastic for 67, I think it was, and then they lost by 16 in the end after leading after 67 minutes. So, again, New Zealand just seemed to roll on. They've tried another combination with Beauden Barrett at fly-half, did pretty well. Then he went to fullback, scored a couple of tries in the match. So, they're rolling along nicely, unbeaten on this tour, heading into the World Cup. Obviously they're going to be favourites no matter what happens between now and then. Wales, New Zealand sort of laid the benchmark now for us. They've beaten Wales by 16 points. Now it's South Africa's turn on the weekend to see what they do. Sort of like, we'll stack up against the New Zealand performance to see how we compare against that Wales team. It's going to be a tough game. I'm not too sure how many players Wales lose because of this test window, but they're still going to be competitive at home. They pretty much are every weekend. So Springboks will have their work cut out for them, but I'm quietly confident. But we'll just have to wait and see, who's picked to play this weekend.
And then just touching on the Ireland Australia results, that's the second consecutive defeat for Michael Cheika, but probably shouldn't read into it too much. I mean, he was hauled in right at the last minute. He started well, the guys.
Yeah, look,
two wins and then.
No, absolutely. It was a fantastic match to watch, but Ireland got off to I think a 17-0 or 15-0 lead after as many minutes, and Australia did incredibly well to claw that deficit
back.
They
had some really great East.
Yeah, I was really impressed by them. Again, it's the second match that the Wallabies have played against Ireland and Wales. With the first half has been fantastic. They've had tons and tons of tries. Second half, very very low scoring affair. So I'm not too sure the reason for that. But the Wallabies won't lose too much heart. They are still sort of a team in building. They've got Kirky Beale back in the squad now. He's a bit of a disruptive influence there. Michael Cheika is still learning about his players. He's tried a few new faces in the pack as well as the back line. So they went down by a couple of points. The Springboks went down by far more. So the Irish team is probably the best of the European bunch at the moment. They are the defending Six Nations champions. It'll be very interesting to see how Ireland go in January, February's Six Nations, where, as Rob mentioned, they'll be playing at Twickenham and in Wales, places that they will play in the World Cup. So I don't expect them to be too familiar with the conditions, and I expect them still to be a force at the World Cup. A lot of this World Cup depends on the draw, and they've got a fairly favourable draw. They're not in that horrible Wales, England, Australia side of the draw, so they should at least get through their group. Potentially even into the semi-finals, and then straight knockout games. Anything could happen. It could just come down to the ref rather than the better team on the day.